Dear students, in this session, let's discuss about planning with special reference to the disadvantages of planning. While planning is crucial for organization success, it is not without its challenges. In fact, many organizations face significant limitations when it comes to planning. Let's break down some of the common ones. The first limitation is related to limitation of forecast. Planning is based on looking into the future, and that it means heavily dependent on predictions or forecasts. But what happens when those forecasts are inaccurate or unreliable? The entire plan can fail. Let's take an example. A smartphone manufacturer forecasts a 50% increase in demand for a new model and plans its production schedule and raw material purchases accordingly. However, a competitor releases a similar phone with better features at a lower price, and demand for the new model is much lower than expected. The company is now left with excess inventory and wasted resources because its initial forecast went wrong. So, therefore, limitation of forecast. Planning is based on forecast. If data is unreliable, the entire planning process can suffer. Now, let's understand the next limitation, which is rigidity. This refers to how a plan can become so strict that it restricts an organization to adapt to. When a plan is too rigid, it can limit creativity and make it difficult for employees to think outside the box. It essentially forces a strict follow to predetermined policies and procedures, which can be a major hurdle when unexpected changes occur. Example, a marketing department creates a year long campaign plan with a rigid schedule of social media posts, email, newsletters, and ad placements. A major news event suddenly shifts public attention, making their planned content seem insensitive and irrelevant. Due to the rigid nature of their plan, they are slow to adapt and miss an opportunity to create a more timely and effective advertisement campaign. The next disadvantages or limitation is time consuming. Planning is also known for being time consuming. Creating a detailed and comprehensive plan requires a lot of time and effort. This includes gathering data, analyzing information, and coordinating with various teams. In some cases, the time spent on planning can delay action and decision making, which can be a real disadvantage in fast changing environment. Example, a startup team spends 6 months creating an extremely detailed 100-page business plan before launching their product. By the time they finish, a competitor has already entered the market and captured a significant share. The startup's meticulous planning process, while through, was too slow and caused them to lose their first move advantage. The next drawback is relating to being costly. Planning can be an expensive exercise. The costs aren't just about the time spent, they also include the resources needed to gather data, conduct research, and hire consultants or experts. A business must carefully analyze the cost of the planning process against the potential benefits it will bring. Example, a large corporation hires an expensive consulting firm to develop a new 5 year strategic plan. The cost of the consultant, along the internal resources and time dedicated to the project, amounts to millions of dollars. The plan's implementation, however, is not as successful as anticipated, and the company finds that the cost of planning process was more than the returns. The next disadvantage is relating to influence of external factors. Let's talk about the influence of external factors. These are things that are completely outside the control of the planners. Think about political changes, economic shifts, or natural disasters. A great plan can be completely derailed by these unpredictable external forces, no matter how well researched it is based on. Example, a company plans to open a new manufacturing plant in a foreign country. Basing its financial projections on a stable political and economic environment, suddenly a new government come to power with policies and that nationalize foreign assets, and their entire plan is ruined. This shows how external factors can make even the most detailed plan waste overnight. The next is relating to limited scope. Planning can also have a limited scope. This is particularly true for organizations that are heavily involved in fields with where trends and technologies change rapidly. A plan that is focused on a specific narrow goal might not be able to accommodate a broader, more dynamic market. In such cases, the plan can be too focused on what is rather than what could be. Example, a fashion company plans its production for the next season based on the current trend. However, a viral social media movement causes a sudden shift in consumer preferences, and the planned clothing designs are no longer in style. The company's limited scope in planning prevented it from being moving enough to adapt to the new unexpected trend. The next is people's resistance. Finally, we have people's resistance. No matter how good a plan is, if people within the organization are unwilling to accept or implement it, it will fail. This is especially common in older, well established organizations where employees may be comfortable with the current way of doing things and resist any change. Example, a company introduces a new digital first marketing strategy that require all sales representatives to use a new software system for customer relationship management. The senior sales team who are used to traditional methods resist the change and continue to their older, inefficient system, causing the new plan to fail and creating internal conflict. Let's understand the last drawback or disadvantage of planning: failure of people in planning. Lastly, a plan can fail due to the failure of the people involved in the planning process itself. This can be due to lack of commitment, poorly defined objectives, or a lack of effective control techniques. Without the right people and a clear vision, a plan is nothing more than words on page. Example, a project team is tasked with creating a new software application. The project leads fails to clearly define the project's objectives and scope, and there is a lack of effective delegation of tasks. The team members are confused about their roles and responsibility, leading to a poorly designed and the product that doesn't meet the company's needs. So these are the limitations of planning. Let me sum up the highlights of the disadvantages. The first is limitation of planning is limitation of forecast, rigidity, time consuming, costly, influence of external factors, limited scope, people's resistance, and the last one is failure of people in planning. So these are the drawbacks or disadvantages of planning.